The silence of space wrapped around her like a shroud, punctuated by the distant, barely audible thrum of stars and nebulae, their luminescence weaving through the cosmos like spinning thread. In the vast welter of the Orion Nebula, where gaseous dust clouds merged and congealed into stellar works of art, Captain Zaratalis stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Grace, gazing at the vortex of interstellar beauty scrolling by on the main screen. For months, dozens of stray signals and occasional blips in her sensors had seduced her with the possibility of something superb. But nothing had prepared her for the instant when a massive, unknown human warship appeared from the dark no-man's land of disputed space. A chill washed over the bridge as the warship's silhouette flared against the backdrop of the nebula. It was a ghostly apparition, its behemoth hull steeped in eldritch light, its shape indistinguishable amid the maelstrom of stellar debris. Sensor readings were through the roof, indicating tech light years ahead of what mankind was capable of. At that moment, each member of the crew understood the terror of the unknown, an omen maybe of a bygone history or a future stained by violence. The arrival of the warship spread as rapidly through the ranks as fire. And in the midst of quiet communications, strange hints of ancient knowledge and forbidden information started to weave with on-the-ground intrigue. Ancient interstellar visions told tales of sunk fleets and testbeds lost in the void, vestiges of a time when humanity was willing to push its limits. Now here in the Orion Nebula, the present and the past collided in a silent, forbidding signal. Zara was plagued with thoughts about the tenuous balance they had brokered between the intergalactic factions, a balance that was now at risk thanks to this ghostly intruder. With every beep from the control panel, each's proud encrypted bit of communication being intercepted from worlds that sat billions of light years away, the fragile peace of the last few decades shook as if shouted down like an ordained preacher. Outside, the void had become a set piece in a play of cosmic proportions, a drama capable of tearing friendships asunder and rekindling rivals long perceived as extinguished. As the warship plodded along, silent and inscrutable, the bridge of the Aurora's Grace became a microcosm of anxious anticipation. Such glances were loaded with fears that remained unsaid. Instruments were reset with shaking fingers. Yet out of it all Zara shone, with a stoic authority that others also fell around in. The kind of moment to wonder and wish maybe if this sight was the herald of the world about to come, or the end to be. In that leaning atmosphere, the remoter echoes of cosmic winds accumulated more than starlight. They carried the hushed gossip of the galaxy, hints of a truth buried by the ages. And with each passing minute, the realization of destiny grew more palpable, one that would undoubtedly rewrite the entire story of interstellar travel and war. The expedition had kicked off, along with it, the mystery getting resolved and the thread to check the very fabric of the cosmic fate. The radiant glow of the nebula played and twirled across the bitter steel of the warship, presaging the chaos soon to engulf the galaxy, a chaos that none yet knew would redefine the destiny of those who looked up and sought their fortune among the stars. How in the narrow whine of the Aurora's Grace the burden of duty bore down on Captain Zaratalis. Zara withdrew to her study, a place of meditation that was blanketed with artifacts from missions long past and frayed still images from lives lost to the infinite abyss. Here the silence was a canvas on which memories and doubts were drawn in colors too acute for memory. Sitting at a polished desk of obsidian, Zara read from encrypted logs and ancient maps that suggested mysteries born from humanity's early expeditions into space. All data, all fragments of a forgotten encoding of an experiment, called to her hidden truths. The sudden sighting of the warship had awakened echoes of legends buried long in the lore of space exploration. They generations of bold scientists, brash generals, transgressions of the possible, and sometimes of the permissible. Her thoughts drifted back to the fateful mission that had taken everything from her, the best and worst of human innovation and the unrelenting numbness of the cosmos. That loss had left her with scars that were not just memories, but creases of her resolve. It was that same determination that now drove her to want to know what the mysterious ship was, which loomed on the fringes of what her people knew of space. After taking a steadying breath, she let herself momentarily think about how the past, for all its victories and devastations, had brought her to this one moment in time. Elsewhere, in the hive-like passageways of the Aurora's Grace, her crew bustled about with a tacit urgency. Around holographic displays, technicians and analysts huddled, reconstructing segments of eavesdropped signals and historical information. In whispers, they exchanged theories of ancient human experiments, grand projects intended to protect the future of humanity, with unintended consequences. They said things like that in halting, jargon-laden sentences that hinted at mythical undertones and wove a story of intrigue that wrapped around the entire vessel. Her eyes bore the weariness of a weary soul who has seen too much death, and yet the steely edge of someone who knew what needed to be done and was the leader who would do it. In the command center, she spoke to her officers in a voice so steady it masked the turmoil that roiled underneath. We're going to have to be very precise about our next steps. Each one of this puzzle is a piece closer to unveiling the real identity of the warship and maybe our past. That set a burning resolve in the room, a collective vow to bring forth the truth that hid in the shallow dark of space. The Aurora's Grace traversed the stars in silence, and Zara took one final glance at the sprawling vista flecked in the ship's panoramic viewport. The cosmic sight beyond composed a strange mixture of ethereal beauty and dark foreboding. Nebulae flickered like the brushstrokes of a master painter, but all this was accompanied by the ever-present fear of forgotten secrets. With that, the captain decided to reconstruct the fragmented history that had brought the warship to port. Picked up a voice from her past, a voice she had concealed for too long under a cloak of time and distance. And with the engines of the ship beating gently in the background, steering them toward a destiny mingled with age-worn ambitions along with adventures yet birthed among unknown stars, Zaratalis understood the revelation, however small, brought them closer, she hoped, to unraveling the threads of the story and closer to confronting that legacy of experiment humanity so often found itself waiting deep within. In the corridors of the Aurora's Grace, hope and determination kept beating hard. The shadows of their shared past cast long and dark around them, as each moment urged them to step ever deeper into the supernatural fog of what had come before, and, unknowingly, toward the future that yet awaited them. In the infinite emptiness beyond the nebula, the Aurora's Grace shivered as if preparing for the unforeseen. The ship's sensors had only just flared with an ominous alert. The mysterious warship, a relic of human ambition and esoteric engineering, had sprung into vigorous motion. The quiet that had blanketed the vessel was broken by frantic beeps and agitated voices. Warm up to mayhem. Captain Zaratalis was at the helm, eyes trained on the live feed from the sensors array. The warship appeared on the viewer, its massive silhouette, hull illuminated with distant stars, dark and oily in the patches that were not catching the light of faraway burning suns, the obsidian-fueled pandemic of war hiding secrets in its steel ribs. The very fibers of the ship vibrated with untapped potential, like a behemoth awakening from its ancient hibernation. Status report. Zara bellowed, her voice cutting through the bridge's tension. Engineers and technicians scrambled as they relayed streams of data and speculation about the vessel's origin. The readings indicated advanced technology, parts well beyond what is currently technically feasible for known human designs. It felt as if the warship was a bridge between the past and a future not yet fully rearing up. Amid an alternate intriweave of ambition, Admiral Riker Venn, robed within the strategmaze of Dominion Armada shadow play, spectated the unit's phase of the game upon his sieging battlecruiser command center. His cold gaze pored over encrypted messages and pirated transmissions with a predatory intensity. For Venn, the warship was no mere aberration. It was a weapon, a passport to a power play he meant to spin into opportunity. "Mobilize all units," he bellowed to his lieutenants, his tone frigid and uncompromising. "This is a relic we cannot let go. Its secrets will be mine, and with them, the galaxy shall kneel." Back on the Aurora's Grace, tensions ran high. The bridge was a neurotic cloud left behind by a buzzing swarm. The holographic displays flickering away as convoluted streams of data coalesced into a scattered support. Zara addressed each officer with urgency, carefully connecting the dots between the file pieces. "It's not just an abandoned relic," she said softly to her chief science officer. "It's active. It's sending signals, a network of sorts, a beacon, maybe a warning." A sense of urgency rippled through the room, underscoring her words. As the warship commenced slow and deliberate maneuvers, the crew of the Aurora's Grace debated vigorously. In one camp, analysts speculated that this vessel was the remnant of a long-forgotten human experiment, a proof of concept left to drift through the cosmos until its point of reckoning. In one, legions of security officers advanced to pitch-perfect tactical coordination, while aware that each second that passed brought them that much closer to an engagement with the Dominion forces that now hunted the warship with excessive bloodlust. Amidst the cacophony of technical alerts and the hushed theories of ancient cosmic legends, the bridge bristled with a strange fusion of terror and determination. Zara's mind raced. Was this warship the key to humanity's lost past, a vault of forgotten knowledge, or a Pandora's box of annihilation? Hope and dread danced in her mind, as she realized what was before them could either be the first day of creation or the last. In the middle of the chaos, a junior officer's voice cut through the noise. "Captain, I'm detecting an anomalous signal coming from the warship's core. It's rhythmic, almost like a pulse." That realization had sent a shockwave through the room. Zara leaned in, her eyes narrowing in analysis of the pattern. "That pulse," she whispered, "could be the warship's beating heart, an organ of control, so to speak, for its latent power." A flame of determination lit up that, as if they could grasp this, they could also reveal the depths of its secrets. This announcement triggered an organized response that was a part military operation and part scientific exploration, and Zara was ordering a recon group to get closer to the warship. It was a perilous decision, yet there was no choice. The answers they needed lay shuttered within the cryptic craft. Meanwhile, aboard distant battlecruisers and inside secret command stations, Admiral Venn plotted his next move to seize the artifact before it could escape his fingers. As the Aurora's Grace pointed her nose toward the gray behemoth looming ahead, every member of the crew could feel their fates turning. The spark of disorder had been ignited, and the galaxy stood at the precipice of a revolution that would reshape power structures, identities, and the trajectory of human destiny. In that tension-fraught second, when the warship's ornately pulsating heart was flinging long, dark, spidery shapes across the void, the last battle between the old world and the new was about to explode into a cosmic storm of violence, a clash that would challenge the very definitions of human courage and ingenuity. Urging the Aurora's Grace nearer, the mysterious skiff crept toward the warboat as if attracted by some unseen force. It existed, in the dimmest of all dim light of interstellar sensors, a titan, and its presence ripped a great swath out of the darkness of space, leaving in its wake a great tapestry of leering danger and profound mystery. The titanic hull of the ship, itself marred by the ravages of battles long since left behind, shimmered with a spectral light that echoed with the ghostly heartbeat that had been detected. Within the Aurora's Grace, the ground buzzed with excitement and anxiety. Captain Zaratalis and her team followed a winding path of narrow corridors leading to the airlock. They were careful in their movements, and their faces set into determined expressions as they strapped on high-tech-looking suits that protected against the vacuum of space for travel or crawl into the warship and stuck them back. The void outside bore mute witness to the collision of fates. The vessel, moving through the waves with purposeful elegance, began to make small alterations in course, a gentle, near imperceptible rotation that conveyed an understanding of the incoming ship. Its engines, now quiet for months, emitted soft, rhythmic pulses, as if the ship were shaking off sleep after a long nap. The slow shift was a subtle flicker, an open, albeit guarded, call to those brave enough to discover the secrets it held. In an adjacent story playing out at a far-flung outpost, Admiral Riker Venn's forces acted with icy efficiency. Tapping into secure communications, we uncovered the fact he was in constant contact with his operatives, whose methods of clandestine deployment they were coordinating. His lieutenants, ready to unleash fire at any moment, tracked every change in the warship's attitude. For Venn, this was not just an investigation, it was a hunt. He saw the warship's latent power in the way a predator considers its prey, with a view toward turning the tide of the galaxy and winning his favor forever. On board the Aurora's Grace again, the air hung heavy with tension as the reconnaissance team floated toward the yawning airlock of the unknown ship. Even the silence of space was filled only with the soft hiss of recycled air and the steady thrum of life support systems. It was a steady nod from Zara, and the airlock doors began to slowly creak. Inside the warship, corridors reached into darkness like the entrails of an ancient beast. Every panel was a lesson in contrast. Sleek expanses of advanced composite materials punctuated by rust patches and strange etchings that suggested a complex history. The humidity thickened with each step they took, and the air inside became musty as if hundreds of years of dirt and dust were swept aside to reveal the remnants of alien technology buried deep within the earth over eons. Between the rhythmic beeps of every second, they could feel the hiss of tides returning as their paunches flared, like orchid flowers blooming into life. Zara's heart raced with exhilaration and apprehension. She murmured terse, clipped words with her science officer, who was busy scanning the walls for any active circuitry or historical data embedded in the vessel's structure. With each passage deeper into the warship, the mystery deepened. It was like the walls were whispering forgotten secrets themselves, a history of human ambition and sacrifice, and maybe even the hubris of a generation long dead. That sound, suddenly, a resonating clang at the far end of the passage, something metallic yet mournful. The team froze and peered for any sign of movement. In that suspended moment, the silence turned into a charged, breathing thing. Zara's voice cut through the tension, authoritative and calm. Stay alert. Every shadow may conceal a clue or a danger. The words rippled through the group, a silent acknowledgement that within these ancient walls lay not mere vestiges of bygone days, nor entombed rulers of a great civilization, but the ever-present specter of chaos waiting for an opening to surmount them all. Beyond the aircraft carrier, the cosmic ballet played on unabated. The Dominion ships resumed their subtle movement, rounded pitch, under Admiral Venn himself, approaching, attempting to place themselves between interlocutors to take intercept any intel or strategic edge they could get from the warship. The unseen fissures of discord were etching themselves out on the star-sprinkled canvas, charting collision paths not just between vessels, but between two paradigm-shattering visions for humanity's future. The reconnaissance team was deploying deeper into the ship when they reached a large room littered with debris. In its center sat what appeared to be the remains of a control deck, though the exact purpose its suspiciously symmetrical layout was once crafted for was difficult to determine, at least without full schematics of the vessel itself, that is. Long dark holographic displays flickered weakly to life as the team's presence mussed dormant energy fields. The flickering images showed the jumbled scripts of battles, enigmatic orders, and the final hours of an era when human aspiration reached for the stars in unrestrained pursuit. Zara stopped at a central console and traced her fingers across the cool, etched surface. Here, in the middle of the warship, was where the past and present collided to a climax. Every flicker of data, every echo of energy were breadcrumbs to a story waiting to unfold, a story of dreams, of missteps, and of a technology that could inveterately rescue or irrevocably destroy societies. The team's expedition had only just begun, and already the road ahead was full of both wonder and danger. The line between the known and the unknown merged more with every footfall in the quiet labyrinth. The Aurora's Grace and its fearless crew had set sail to a distant time that, unbeknownst to them, would give them a new perspective on history, but would also require them to face the fact that the future was dangling off the edge of a cliff. In that fragile stillness of the unspooling tapestry of life and death, where the age-old secrets took breath to linger in reciting tongues, and the forward gaze of enemies and alleged allies alike converged upon a singular ship of war, the clash of fates was imminent. Thousands of years, thousands of miles from modern civilization, nature began the long process of amalgamating and eroding these colloidal deposits into the very beginnings of rock formations. Deep in the bowels of the warship, in the cold, echoing passages, the air hummed with the tension of a coming clash. The clash not only of weapons, but of ideas. Captain Zaratalis and her crew were only just starting to unravel the layers of ancient data and cryptic codes when the quiet was broken by the sharp crackle of energy beams and the distant roar of approaching combat. A huge realm, God once emptied, now filled with folly. Zara's crew, also armed with advanced scanning devices and pulse rifles, fanned out and assumed defensive positions around the recently activated control deck. Holographic screens, fizzing with flickering images from past days, cast ghostly light on the faces of those seeking to stem the flow of foes. It was a moment of paradox, reverence for lost history fused with the raw urgency of survival. Across the wider expanse of the cosmos, Admiral Riker Ven's fleet moved like a hammer of war. His lieutenants, their voices taut with conviction and ambition, barked orders while Dominion vessels jammed the warship signals. Double, even triple the amount of warships of unsurpassed technology surrounded the Dominion armada and cut the ship like a knife through butter. The vision that drove Vin was unadorned. Take the artifact of forgotten power and leverage it as the keystone to his imperial rise. And in the warship itself, where Zara directed the defense with calm authority, the battle of ideologies played out. On one side were the defenders, champions of hope, scientific exploration, and a continued commitment to intergalactic peace. On one hand, the rebels, a sort of ruthless cadre of power-hungry militarists bent on using technology with little regard for its larger ramifications. It was not enough to beat them at the game of physical strength. It was a contest for the soul of humanity, a reckoning between the idea of progress as a pathway to uplift the whole of society and the perilous seduction of unbridled ambition. In the maelstrom, Zara was having the most tense, heart-to-heart discussion with her second-in-command in the trust of a decade, Lieutenant Merrick. By the comlink, their whispered exchanges encapsulated not only the tactical orders they were giving out, but also the moral dilemmas that haunted their thoughts. Every shot we fire, every decision we make, is a stand for the future we want to see, Zara insisted, her voice low but resolute. Merrick replied with equal firmness. We fight the good fight not just for ourselves, but for every soul that believes in the promise of tomorrow. Their words, tinged with both conviction and sorrow, cut deeper to the stakes at play. Waves of Dominion soldiers spilled into the chamber, their energy weapons sparkling, and fighting broke out across the corridor. The clash of metal in combat as reports of command turned into a collage of sound. In a single powerful visceral moment, a beam of plasma splitting the darkness, Zara's eyes met those of a Dominion officer, a brief enough look to highlight the deep ideological chasm separating them. For that split second, the officer's steely countenance became a mask of conflicted duty, as if he too wrestled with the notion of fighting for a cause that sought to annihilate the principles of innovation and freedom. The chamber itself appeared to beat with the cadence of combat. Ancient gears cracked and whirred, awoken from a lucid dream by the sound of hooped dominoes falling to the pavement, the whir and whir and whir of automatons churning in quiet factories. And amidst all this chaos, Zara worked her team like a battle-hardened general, each move a carefully planned action to keep the latent power within the ship's center modules safe. Sparks flew, and energy shields flickered in and out of existence. And with every cracking explosion of light, it became painfully clear just how close they were to going from order to chaos. At the same time, the philosophical battlefront grew sharper as the conflict escalated. Yet they had become Dominion, unobstructing, unyielding, a future defined only by domination and subordination, a future where the hands of destiny, with choice, were weaponized and left to infection. Zara's team, on the other hand, struggled not just to stave off an assault, but to defend their vision of progress, one that embraced history, diversity, and the possibility of living together in peace. It was a trial by fire, a forging of the bonds between them as they fought to defend not just a ship, but the ideals that were the essence of their civilization. At the height of the maelstrom, a new wave of energy burst from the warship's central core. The whole chamber trembled, as if the ancient technology itself had awakened to the contest of wills. Holographic displays surged into coherent visions of bygone glories and warnings of future ruin. It was a moment that reached beyond mere physical skirmishing, a profound realization that with every element of destruction, there also existed elements of creation, and that there were hints of metamorphosis even in the throes of battle. Their feet anchored to the ground, their hearts pounding in their chests, Zara and her defense fought back against the Dominion invaders, their every movement a declaration of how strong conviction can be. It was for this reason that the warship opened 10D its hull panel, hurling them into Ansari of a battle that, no matter the outcome, they would lose. In that searing crucible of light and shadow, the actual cost of ambition and the price of hope were exposed. And in the aftermath of wills struggling against one another and into the void itself, it was evident that this duel was much greater than a mere contest of weapons and numbers. It was the defining fight for the soul of humanity, one breath at a time. And in the deep bozels of the ancient warship's twisty passageways, a heavy silence prevailed, a silence ominous and expectant. The thick, vibrating air enveloped her mind, and she quickly scanned the hundreds of pages in front of her. The walls as they had scarcely seen, pulsing with a low, surreal phosphorescence. Complex circuitry and antiquated sigils blipped across the surfaces in esoteric instructions to spend too long interested in the art of the place. With long strides, Zara walked the glass floors as if two trails of footsteps were one, the sound of her footsteps ringing through a cavern as if a heartbeat were echoing through the stillness of time. Her head was a storm of thoughts, questions of legacy, fate, the enormous price of progress. Next to her, Lieutenant Merrick and the rest of her team spread out, their devices sweeping for answers about the alien technology they now faced. In the middle of the room sat a massive console that was a wicked combination of quantum tech and remnants of an era when humanity dreamed bigger than was humanly possible. As Zara drew closer, holographic symbols and arcane diagrams flickered to life, as if the room herself awakened to greet the girl. At that moment of greatest tension, it hit home that this, despite the aesthetic nature of the object dug up, it was no mere artifact. It was a nexus, a yawning fulcrum on which the fate of the galaxy could teeter. Zara lifted her gloved fingers, barely shaking, and touched the cool, embossed surface of the console. "This is it," she whispered, to herself more than anyone else. The console throbbed in answer, a gentle beat that matched the tempo of her pulse. As data streamed across its display, the room filled with a low hum, a sonorous mix of voices from the past and the promise of the future. During that silence, she saw a holographic projection. It showed the highlights of ancient battles and the transcendent moments of human achievement, paired with visions of cataclysmic events still to come. The images flashed by fast, each a jigsaw piece that wouldn't fit into a coherent whole. A stream of consciousness unfolded before Zara, pieces from experiments of a half-remembered past and of secret projects, echoes of a time when knowledge had lured humanity into grappling with both the enchanting and the dangerous. The voice was Lieutenant Merrick, and his tone mixed awe and urgency. "Captain, this is not just a control system. According to the data, this is a repository of human legacy. It contains the secrets of those experiments, their ambitions, even the warnings they left behind." His words also captured the magnitude of what was still in front of them, a fulcrum on which past hubris and future hope teetered. The chamber itself appeared to quiver with the force of the revelation. Streams of unrefined energy converged into elaborate designs suspended in the void, an interweaving cloth of light connecting every inch of the warship. It felt like the vessel was alive, a sentient archive bearing witness to humanity's triumphs and follies. I was both bursting with luminosity and the fearsome shadow of what choice had brought them here. Zara closed her eyes for a second, bracing herself. "We stand at the crossroads," she whispered, her voice cracking slightly against the stone-like surfaces. "This nexus holds not just the burden of our past, but the promise of our future. We have to decide, will we use this knowledge to break a path of peace, or will we stake ambition to chaos?" Her words echoed in the ears of every crew member in attendance. They understood that they were not facing a simple technical problem, they were facing a moral crucible. At a side of the holographic display, a series of coordinates and encrypted directives aligned, indicating a dormant system that had the potential to govern entire star systems. The stakes were unimaginable. This kind of tech could either usher the galaxy into a new age of ascendance or a chain reaction of devastation. Amid that tensioned silence, the warship's creaking workings appeared to speak, urging them with caution and commitment to have faith in their way forward. Zara's brain spun with strategic calculations and philosophical dilemmas. It was not merely a key to understanding the warship's origin, a reflection of such infamy, but also a mirror held up to the duality of human nature, where the potential for greatness was always entwined with the specter of downfall. The chamber's energy shifted ever so slightly as she soaked in the last streams of data. The steady hum suddenly grew to a crescendo, announcing the awakening of old systems long set to hibernation. It was as if the air itself had begun to vibrate with potential, as though the ship were coming alive with the prospect of a new dawn. They straightened. Zara, in particular, had a clear stance and asked for her team. The next step is to preserve this knowledge for this knowledge to be a beacon of hope and not a weapon of dominion. We have to log each fragment, each secret this nexus harbors, for by making these records we keep the scales tipped to balance between our past and the future we decide to fabricate. And in that fateful heartbeat, at the intersection of age-old legacy and future potential, the destiny of innumerable worlds appeared suspended. The braided threads of destiny had been revealed, a shining testament to both the heights of human capability and the depths of its potential for ruin. So there, in a chamber throbbing with the beat of coming transformation, Captain Zaratalis and the rest of her crew girded themselves for what was in store on the next leg of their voyage, one that would challenge their valor, their sagacity, and the fundamental nature of humanity itself. As the chaos of battle faded into memory, an eerie stillness descended over the scatter of the warship's Spartan passages. Although its walls were damaged from the intense battle, the chamber which had revealed the Nexus secrets was now barely an area of ruined chaos. Pulsing holographic displays flickered with weathered warnings and echoes of distant dreams, illuminating the faces of Zaratalis and her tired crew with cool, trembling luminescence. Not just the corporeal hull of the ship had been scarred by war. The hearts of those who had thrown themselves into the breach in freedom's defense were changed as well. In the darkness of the command center of the Aurora's Grace, gathering storms only interrupted the dim glow of amber lights, just bright enough for officers to survey the damage and assess the next moves. This was because the air contained almost a violent cocktail of relief and anxiety, in equal measure a piece that was as fragile as the crystalline web that can be seen between some nebulae. Captain Zaratalis stood before a holographic projection outlining the warship as sweat and the remnants of battle soaked through her uniform. Her fire once boisterous gaze now coated blundering weight from recent news. "We have unearthed some truths that some would have preferred stay buried," she whispered, her voice the creaking timbre of someone who had seen too much. "Every scar on this vessel, every murmured memory from the Nexus, teaches us that the road we walk is as dangerous as it is essential." Muffled but out of breath from the clashing skirmish, Lieutenant Merrick stepped his way through. "Captain, our sensors show that the Dominion forces have retreated, for now. But their presence remains in our communications. We must brace ourselves for the fact that they will come back, more motivated than before to seize this power." His words, heavy with urgency, emphasized the fragile balance between the hope for renewal and the specter of renewed conflict. The crew weaved through the warship's passageways with grim practicality. Once extracted, they meticulously documented the new data from the Nexus, extracting each fragment of information as a reminder of what was lost, what was at stake. In small groups, teams talked about the implications of what they had uncovered, advanced directives, and encrypted coordinates hinting at a dormant lattice of systems with the potential to reconfigure entire star systems. The knowledge was a double-edged sword, a beacon of progress for those willing to learn from the lessons of history, or a harbinger of cataclysm in the hands of the people who would twist it to their advantage. In one hidden alcove, Zara halted before a shattered viewport that opened to the insatiable void. The dark outside now matched the uncertainty she felt in her soul. The bitter combat of ideological weapons from the previous chapter, the nurturing hope of innovation versus the ruthless ambition for power, came crashing back into focus. But now, in the silence that came after, that struggle had become a deep reckoning. Those who waged the war were not the only ones to pay the cost. The shockwaves of the battle went beyond this charred landscape, reverberating across the galaxy as the fragile dance of galactic politics and power teetered. And a whispered exchange between two senior officers revealed the wider implications of the disclosure. The warship was never just a ship, one officer said, as if afraid the sound itself could stir old spirits. It was a repository of our collective past, a mirror reflecting our highest achievements and our worst failures. We are at a crossroads, where the choices we make now will ensure a future of enlightenment or descend us further into chaos. The weight of this moment hung heavy in every hushed word, every stanza a testament to the paradox of human ambition as a trail riddled with equal measure of potential and danger. As the crew compiled their findings, efforts to restore order and examine the structural damage got underway in earnest. Engineers forged an alliance with historians and data warriors, reconstructing scraps of ancient blueprints and silenced tongues inscribed across the ship's interior. Each discovery was a reminder of what a people who had once cried for the stars had dared to dream. Now those dreams would shape the fate of the future, for good or ill. Zara called a final briefing in the command center. "We know what we have to do, and we have the capacity to change our course," she pronounced, her voice firm despite the fatigue that enveloped her like a second skin. "But we must choose wisely. The legacy contained in these walls is as much a warning as a guide. But the coming days will put to the test whether we have risen to the challenge or succumbed to the very same ambitions that once came close to destroying us." The chapter after the aftermath was not one of resignation, but of cautious resolve. The Aurora's Grace was preparing to set a course back into the troubled currents of interstellar politics, and the crew carried that burden still, the weight of the revelations they had discovered. In each spectral wound of memory, in each lingering offshoot of eons gone by, was a summons to responsibility, to give thanks for those who endured before them, and yet to risk a hopeful future in which memory and caution were given equal weight. When the storm passed and silence reigned once again in the ship's corridors, ancient as they were, other voices filled the air, the whispers of a timeless union of destruction and creation. It was now time for the last act, a reckoning that would push to the limits the essence of human will and the eternal search for redemption in a cosmos where every choice could plunge time into destiny. The darkness beyond the warship glowed faintly with the light of stars, distant and small, as the Aurora's Grace began its gradual, resolute withdrawal. That battle was over, but its shock waves would ripple throughout the galaxy. In the wake of bitter struggle and hard-fought truth, Captain Zaratalis and her ship were now at the dawn of a future that held both hope and mortality. In the deep chamber of the warship at its center, the very heart where the ancient secrets had been spread out naked, the spindly trails of holographic projectors tremored sympathetically, the vrum hue patterning the walls. Now the nexus of fate, trekked silent, had bestowed its coded counsel, a tale of human drive, triumph, and peril. In this place, each scarred mark and every flicker of potential unrealized was a reminder of the legacy of both building and obliteration. Zara called her senior officers together for one last debriefing in the warship's rebuilt command hall. The simply styled chamber, once the setting for all the ruckus battle won, but now a melancholy suspension of sound. Speaking in a thoughtful tone behind the camera that calmed the volcano of emotions brewing behind closed doors, Zara shared the takeaways. "What we're finding here isn't the vestiges of ancient history," she said, scanning the tired but steadfast faces of her crew. "They are both a warning and a guide, a reflection of our past mistakes and a reminder of the tremendous opportunity before us." In the atrium, the lights of the Dominion Armada were long reduced to stars, their echoes of ambition fading amidst the dark expanse. Today there are tentative alliances forming across old galactic lines, leaders inspired by Zara's conviction along with the revelation of truth that the ancient vessel had revealed. News of the changes and cooperation spread across the galaxy, heralding a new epoch. As the Aurora's Grace wove her way back toward the nexus of human and alien diplomacy, Zara lost herself in thought for long hours at a time. The abyss outside was a canvas of possibilities, a dance of light and dark that reflected the duality of man. In these moments of reflection, she found both comfort and determination. These scars of war were not only painful wounds, but the most desolate place where hope was born. At the ship's communal mess hall, discussions got animated as crew members opened up about future plans. Some envisioned a technologic renaissance that would lift civilizations out of parochial rivalries, while others pointed out the same technologies could descend into chaos if they weren't controlled. Their dialogue, both tender and fiery, was the perfect distillation of the clash of ideals that had marked their journey. It was a conversation not merely on survival, but on the future of every sentient being that looks up and sees the stars with hunger and dread. A final, decisive meeting was held in the conference room of Aurora's Grace. It had become a meeting of sorts for representatives from whatever factions still bound themselves to such rarely advised philosophies, be you scientist, diplomat, or former officer of the Dominion, to tentatively negotiate a charter, the principles of openness, unity, and mutual respect. And as arguments flared with the strained tempo of a universal pulse, Zara's voice rang clear above the din. Let us choose a future in which our technology is a lighthouse instead of a noose, she implored. Let our shared history be the framework of trust and cooperation, not division and fear. In that moment of destiny, the weight of his ship and its entire crew lightened with the feeling of purpose. Once a silent monument to humanity's frailties, the warship now played a role in the opening up of a new epoch, a fulcrum point, a crossroad, with a bright morning or dark of an endless night hanging in the balance. The Aurora's Grace glided through the starlit seeming void on her path to a hopeful horizon, cushioning echoes of struggled for past against the gentle promise of renewal. In the grand narrative of the universe, every luminary was a potential phoenix, and each void held a warning of trials to come. But in the hearts of those who had witnessed both the wonders and the dangers of rampant ambition, a sure determination had sprung up in its place, a resilience to a future built not of fear, but of the spirit of new collaborations and a chance at a new future. It was a journey that was as old as creation itself, and the climax was upon them. Conflict, discovery, and redemption all rolled into one eternal symphony that cloaked itself within the folds of time and space. For as the last page of this odyssey turned, one truth remained. The future was not destined by celestial alignments, but was forged in the zodiac of sacrifices made by those who aspired to dream, to struggle, and to believe.